today on our Dear Claire series, I am talking about what fees are outside of the normal fees that you know about that show up on your closing statement. So what kind of things do I have out of pocket even if things don't work out with a purchase? So these are fees that you might not be aware of, and I'm going to be citing specifics to Portland. So they're going to vary depending on where you are across the country. Some of them are probably going to be less expensive depending on if you're in the Midwest or the South. In Oregon, our contractors are pretty expensive. So the inspectors, of course, are a little more expensive as well. So when you're buying a home, we walk through it. Everybody's so excited, and then comes the part that kind of breaks your heart, which is what's wrong with the house. So the way we find out what's wrong with the house are inspections. So when we walk through a house, I'm going to point out all the major systems in the property and tell you what I think their useful life is. But the inspector is going to do a really deep dive. And so the general home inspector is going to be at the property typically between 3 and 7 hours, depending on how large the property is and if there's an outdoor shop or a shed or something like that. They're going to give you a book, and it's going to have every single thing that's wrong with that house. It's going to include an outlet that doesn't work, the dishwasher leaking, the roof's leaking, pretty much anything that they can see with their naked eye. So the reason why that's important is obviously you can't see through walls. So if there's knob and tube wiring or anything like that, they can't see that. So they produce this book, and then we go back and get contractors to get bids on everything so that you know what the cost of those replacements are going to be. So inspection, general home inspection, is outside of closing costs, what people typically call closing costs, and it's kind of upfront as the transaction's going on. So that cost for a general home inspection depends on the square footage of the home. The least you're going to probably see is about $500, and I've seen all the way up to probably $750, almost $1,000, depending on the size. If we're buying multifamily, it's going to be more than that. It can be upwards of $1,500 if there's 4 units to inspect with 4 different systems and all of that. Also, so that's the general home inspection. Most of our properties here in Oregon are old. They're mostly built before 1950s, 60s. So that means we did some stuff that we don't do anymore. So some of the things that we did that we don't do anymore is bury oil tanks. So we used to bury oil tanks and fill them with fuel to heat our houses. Those oil tanks leaked some of the time and caused environmental hazards. So one of the tests that we recommend that is also something that you wouldn't know about otherwise, it's not going to show up on the statement that your lender gives you to give you an estimate of what you're going to have out of pocket, is an oil tank scan. So an oil tank scan is usually about $200. If they find an oil tank to test the soil and see if the oil tank is leaking, it's going to be another $350. So it's a lot of money. The other thing we typically test are the sewers. So all of our infrastructure is often from the 1920s, and those sewers can often, the joints, if you're looking at the joints and they're like this, they separate, or roots get in there, and that is a major system. It can be really expensive to fix. That is a $150 inspection as well. And then the last other inspection that we often recommend is a radon test. That's also $150. Radon is an odorless, colorless gas that causes lung cancer. It's a heavy gas, so it accumulates in the lowest part of a structure. And we test that to see what the concentration of that chemical or that substance is in the home. We get to use all of the information we gather from all of these inspections to renegotiate on the sale of the property. So just know that it's money well spent, and of course it's money that you get to use so that you know what you're getting into and you'll have no questions about what you need to do on the property. So that's home inspections. Appraisal is for the bank. That is paid upfront, and that's usually about $500 to $750 as well. That is typically included on the closing cost statement that your lender will give you. But most people don't realize that that's not paid at the end. It's paid usually in the middle of the process of buying a home. Your credit report check, that's going to happen immediately when you apply for credit. That's like $25. So if you're buying a house, it's not very expensive, but that will also be on your settlement statement. So that is something that the lender does take into consideration. And then the application fee, usually that's not going to be very expensive either. And that's typically listed on the worksheet that the lender gives you. So you should be able to see that. It's just one of those, sometimes they charge you that upfront and not at the end like most people think. I'm just thinking through everything that we've talked about. And then the last thing is, of course, people don't realize this, but I think you often do. If you've gone to a lender and you've talked to a lender, they've given you that estimated worksheet is what they call it, and it just gives you the hypothetical, okay, I'm pre-approved for this amount, and if I'm pre-approved for this amount, then here's all the fees associated with the purchase. One of those items listed in there is called, there's like 5 words for this same thing. So people sometimes call it an escrow account. They sometimes call it an impound account. They sometimes call it your reserves. They're all saying the same thing. And what it is your prepaid property taxes and homeowners insurance and sometimes mortgage insurance. All of those are going to be part of those closing costs, the big amount of closing costs that they give you on that worksheet. And that's the lender taking that money up front so that they can pay for you in the future your property taxes and your homeowner's insurance the following year. I'm happy to go through all of this and explain it with you. There's a lot to know about buying a home that might not be obvious unless you talk to somebody, so that's what I'm here for. Talk to the professionals. As always, I want to hear from you. So if there's anything you're wondering about that we haven't addressed here, please comment below. I would be happy to address your question in the next Dear Claire. And of course, subscribe to us. Check out our YouTube channel. We have all kinds of great information there for you too, especially if you're an actual homeowner or you're thinking about selling. We've got all kinds of stuff there for you. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Take care.